Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Does this feel weird to you? Feels weird to me. Whoa. In the name of Christ. So, we're going to talk about grace this morning, and first I'd like to make an illustration for us about grace, that this particular cycle we're in with Lent goes from when we talk about Jesus' life, certainly to his death in Lent and Good Friday, to the resurrection, but one sometimes misses the point that the full circle is not completed until the ascension. That cycle involves God or Jesus coming from heaven, living a life for us, dying for us, rising from the dead, and then going back to heaven. And each week we remember and we rehearse that pattern to remind us that God's intentional purpose is to full circle, bring us around from sinlessness, where we started, to eternity in his presence. And that's really all about his grace, which when we talk about, we have to try to capture what it means. It's like icing on the cake, that his intentional relationship is about getting back to him, about being restored, about being reunited, about being with him again forever. Now, when we go to grace, we really shouldn't go to grace until we go to death. What's important about that is when we immerse ourselves, or when we understand about death and dying, when we have understood that we live with the threat of death, it only makes us more fully understand what God's grace is about. In today's gospel, you will see the phrase, "He lifted them up," or "He invited them to come," or "He brought them back." And if we look at the Gospel of John, we will find that in chapter 3 and in chapter 8 and in chapter 12, we find once again the same illustration of being lifted up, invited back, returning. And when we take the lessons of the day, we see in each one of them the fact of death, trespass, sin, brokenness, but also the grace that sets them in contrast. Look at it. The people of Israel were wandering in the wilderness. And of course, as they wandered, they complained a lot. They griped a lot. They carried on a lot. They tried to get around God at the same time. And God said, guess what? Here's some snakes. And the snakes bit them, and they were dying. And what does he do? He takes one of those bronze snakes, and he puts it around a cross, and he lifts it up. So in the midst of death, they are seeing and experiencing and invited to life. Look here. What's interesting is, and in this important thing, later on, this cross with the snake had to be destroyed. Because often we take the things of grace in our life and turn them into idols. And it became an idol for the people. So later in the Old Testament, it was destroyed. So now we go to the Psalm. And the Psalm has a lot of stuff about God's grace and love and mercy, but in it, it talks about suffering and dying, and then it talks about healing and delivering and cleansing. And there we see the same pattern. Death and the possibility of it, either here or there, because we can be dead and alive and dead. You know that one from your lessons before you've heard in sermons. But the Psalm again raises up the saving power of God in Jesus Christ. From there we go to the second lesson, and what does Paul talk about? We are dead in our trespasses and sin. We are in the flesh. We are caught up in the world. And then if you look at the middle of the lesson, you'll see it. But God sent His Son in Christ. You are saved by grace through faith. It is not a work. It is not something you can boast about. It is God's grace. The gospel does exactly the same thing. Even as the serpent was lifted up in the wilderness to bring life, so Jesus must be lifted up so that we can look to Him, because we love living in the darkness. We are afraid of the light because it might expose us. We are not willing to trust ourselves to the light because the trust takes courage and risk. We'd sooner talk about our faith as a thing rather than talk about trust as something that we do. It's inevitable that we will come to that place where we begin to understand that grace is all about God. There is nothing we can do. No, wait, there's nothing. Oh, with grace, there is nothing we have to do. There is nothing we have to do. There is nothing we have to do. So that little set of verses sort of says it's out of our hands. And grace always makes us struggle, because it reminds us that we have no power, that we cannot control God, that we cannot manipulate Him. Little Benjamin was told that he had to go to bed early. And as his father went to say goodnight to him and they were saying prayers, Benjamin looked up at him and said, "Dad, I hate you." And as a good father might do, he looked at him and said, "Well, I know, son, you're angry at me, but I love you." "Don't say that, Dad." "Well, Benjamin, it is true. I love you. Dad, will you stop saying that? I don't want to hear that. Well, Benjamin, it is the truth. Like it or not. And that's the same with God's grace. You see, we are not in a position of control with God's grace. And we cannot manipulate it. We cannot deserve it. We cannot barter our way through it. It has absolutely nothing to do with us. And if we did, we would think we have a corner on God. But grace shows us we have no corner. Because the only power available to us that can save us is God's grace. We can say no to it. We cannot trust it. We can run away from it. But we cannot change the power of God's grace, who always loves us in spite of what we do. So grace. Grace is sort of like, here's your life. You might not have been, but you are, because the party wouldn't have been complete without you. Here's the world. I love you. Grace is about being and doing. The being part is God is in heaven and everything is all right. The doing is crazy and holy, and it explodes all over the place. We used to have a couple of friends, and Sunday afternoon was their time for friends. And we'd go there on the side of the hill and sit on the deck and laugh and talk and be warm in the sun and feel the breezes and sit and watch the eagle fly overhead. And then there would come a big plate of chicken or steak and corn on the cob and other things, and then a cup of coffee. And it just was a good time of support and encouragement and hope. It was an activity that for me and my wife really was graceful. There was no expectation for us, but just to be there and sit there and be abundantly blessed and nourished by this couple who entertained and gave us gifts. And many Sunday afternoons, that was a calming after the morning's activities at church. Grace has to do with awakenings or implosions. R.D. Lang says they are the threshold between consciousness and unconsciousness. R.D. Lang calls them bridges into alien territory. He says they are saving mysteries. They are unforeseeable moments when we are deeply loved in our core through them. Frederick Buechner says, crazy, holy grace. Crazy? Who would have or could have predicted that they were going to happen? Holy? As far away as Oz and as deeper down than Doom. Holy because they are healing and hallowed. Now, grace moments have particular characteristics which it would be important for us to look for. Grace moments are generally serendipitous. You know, they come at unlikely times, in unexpected circumstances, through unexpected or unlikely persons, either in crisis or tranquility. 2, they have a character or quality of universal love. You are being loved in relation to a person or an experience in that moment. They have a unitive quality that sort of makes us feel part of a whole. In that one moment, we would forgive and embrace the world. Invariably, those moments also have a result. There's a time of recollecting a person or an experience, how in that moment our perspective or our outlook changed. And in them is a living quality of hope and guidance. I've said to you many times, so you'll hear it again this morning, that after my first year at Peace in Christ, Roger Johnson said to me, "I hope you are here for 25 more years." And every time I got down, that popped out serendipitously. There was a quality of being universally loved and cared for, and there was a result. It delivered me from the hole I was in, or from the depression I felt, or the anxiousness that was going on with me. And that was a moment of grace that I will take to my grave, which continues to feed me. The story is told about a young woman, actually the first woman to be ordained in the Lutheran Church. And there was a court case to keep her from being ordained. And those attacking her were accusing her of being insincere, of championing a cause. A delegate from her church was there. He happened to be a principal. He was a quiet man. And out of character, he said at one moment in the trial or in the conversation, "How dare you criticize her motivation? I was there when she was baptized. And I saw her since she was born as a child of God." And that woman, who had a difficult time accepting the fact herself that she could be an ordained minister, was grabbed by that moment, that affirmation, that grace in her life, in a public way that affirmed her and celebrated her call as a child of God. Grace moments can be all over the place. They're different. Shannon, a teenager, told me once of an argument she had with her father that was fierce. She felt ashamed, guilty, cut off. And she knew that her dad liked Coke. And early the morning before he went to work, she got up, went into his car, and set a can of Coke in his can holder between the seats of the car. And she remarked later how miraculous that was in the healing, because he got the sign. He felt the grace, and she felt the love and grace as she placed it there. Strange. A can of Coke. Grace. I could share more, but I need to tell you that when it comes to moments of grace, you need to be disciplined. That is, you should not forget them. You can always remember the hour, the place, the day when these seismic shakings happened to you. They are starry, bright hours in our life from earliest infancy. Everyone has these moments which have marked them forever. They're not just souvenirs that we get and store away. No, these are suffocating and difficult moments, moments very powerful that live within us, that we renew their ties when we think of them. When we let ourselves grab a hold of the particular quality or relish the taste that they have given us. When we feel them in our heart. These are ontological dimension times when we participate in God's divine life. These are seeds of God's love in our lives that God planted there. In opposition to the world's cares, the things that lure us to wealth, the desire for other things, the things that choke off those things, the things that allow them to die up or dry up or lie dormant. But these grace moments can be dormant for years, and all of a sudden they renew ourself and provide direction. They are the good soil. A prayer of recollection is keeping the ground ready again. Going back is good. Turning them into gods is not. Anthony DeMello says in 4-Minute Wisdom 4 things about moments of grace. Is there anything I can do to achieve enlightenment? As little as you can do to make the sun rise. Then why all these burdensome disciplines that you prescribe? So that you will be awake when the sun rises. Grace moments are built to be experienced. So they have a solidarity about them, a time when we feel like we belong, that we're included, that we're attached. They have a solitude attached to them, a time to be apart and to just rest with them and to feel whole. A time to study them and resource the benefits they come out from them. A time for service when they ignite and encourage us to share the grace of God with others, and a sense of purpose. In these moments, grace gives me a sense of purpose as to my response to God's grace in my life. Yes, they are moments that are crazy. They're holy. They're full of grace. And yet, they surprise us. They take our energy away. I hope that you will think about them and share them with each other, with those you love. They're good things. There was a young priest named Greg Boyle. He was sent to Bolivia to serve the church. And one day the bishop said, I want you to go high in the mountains and visit this group of God's people and lead a mass there. And as he traveled, he about halfway there when he realized that he did not have his leader book and he could not speak Spanish And there was a second language there, Quechua, I think it's called, and he didn't know any of that either. And he began to struggle with that, about how bad the day might be, and how good things couldn't happen, and how much of a jerk he was because he forgot to bring something that was essential, and how would things go on. And the time for the service came, and they gathered in a field, bunch of people. And they had a little altar there, was a table like we have here instead of over there, and some things on it ready to go for the service. And as the service went along, he started thinking about what's going to happen here. What am I going to do? I don't speak the language, either one of the languages. So he grabs out his little book, and he manages to find the words "take" and "eat." So the sermon is over, and it's time for him to lead the Mass. And he mumbles and says a few things, but he's obviously tripping all over himself. And as he stands there, here comes the health worker with a little old lady. And the health worker says to him, "Father, this woman wants to make confession. She has not made a confession in 10 years. And so for 30 minutes, she stands before him in a different language which he doesn't understand, pouring out her heart about the sins that she's been involved in over the last 10 years. And when she's done, he believes that he's able at least to blurb out something that's something close to absolution. And he looks around, and the whole crowd has cleared out. Even his ride is gone back down the mountain. And he stands there forlorn, feeling worthless and helpless. And he goes over to the side, and he picks up his backpack and his stuff, and he turns to start back down the mountain. And he notices this little old man that's coming in his direction. A man with tattered clothes, and he has a rope for a belt, and he's got mud all over his feet and his shoes and everything, and he just keeps coming toward the Father. And when he gets close, he motions him to bow his head, and he does. And he says to the priest, "Tatai," which means Father. And then he takes out a handful of rose petals from his pocket. And he raises his hand over his head, and he just shakes them down onto the priest's head. And then he grabs another handful of rose petals and shakes them down over his head. And then another handful of rose petals. And Greg the priest said to himself, "By grace, we are saved through faith. It is not a work of our own, and we should not boast." May God's grace fill your day and bless your day. May it continue to surprise you and shock you. When you think you know it all, surprise, surprise. When you think you don't fit or belong or don't have any value, surprise, surprise. When you think you have things in control, surprise, surprise. When you think you don't come from a very good neighborhood, surprise, surprise. When you think there's someone you can't love, surprise, surprise. The surprise of God's grace, which reclaims us, feeds us, nourishes us, and sends us on our way. Crazy, holy grace. The peace of God which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds through faith in Christ Jesus. Amen. We continue. Relying on the promises of God, we pray boldly for the church, the world, and all in need. From east to west, your steadfast love is shown. Nourish seas and deserts, wilderness areas and cities. Give water to thirsty lands, nurture spring growth, and feed hungry creatures. Bless farmers as they prepare for the growing season. Hear us, O God. Your mercy endures forever. Deliver all who cry to you, especially those who are hungry or without homes. Give life in places where death seems triumphant.